Good evening. It's 6 o'clock, and we are here for the Town of Newfane special meeting, and we are calling the special meeting a Daniels Hill Road Reclassification Public Hearing. And it's September 24th, 2018, and the time is 6 o'clock. We have an agenda, and what I'm going to do for everybody is I'm going to read exactly all the points of the agenda, and then we'll stop again and go on from the beginning, but just so that everybody knows what will happen tonight. So this afternoon at 4 o'clock, 3 select board members went up to Newfane Hill with Jay Wilson, and we needed 3 people to have a quorum, so fortunately we did get 3 people. And we met with Peter and George, and we took a little tour of different areas along the way of Daniels Hill Road, and George and Peter explained each part of the road and what was going on with it there. Tonight we have a hearing. The first thing tonight is that I will call the meeting to order and go over the rules of procedure for a hearing. The second item is the purpose, and I will read that to you now. The purpose of this meeting is to obtain testimony from petitioners and town officials, as well as public comment regarding the request to take over Daniels Hill Road, and that refers to the town taking it over. Number 3, there will be a presentation by the petitioners. Each petitioner shall limit their testimony to 5 minutes, and that is actually following Robert's Rules of Order. Number 4, we will have a presentation by the town officials. First, the road foreman and the road commissioner, and then a presentation by the administrative assistant to select board, that's Shannon. Then we will have public comment, and those who are commenting shall also limit their remarks to 5 minutes, and that will be timed, and we'll keep a list. At the end, before the adjournment, we, as a select board, will go into deliberative session, and Shannon, will you be joining us? Yes. And so we will have a deliberative session, come back, and then we will adjourn. So now, I'm going back to the top, and I just have to say a few things about the opening remarks and rules of procedure. When we have a group like this, we do have to follow Robert's Rules of Order, and so I'm requesting all of this from the people on the select board and the people who are in the audience. In order to speak, I'm asking everybody out here and on select board to please raise your hand, and when I recognize you, we have requested that anybody who speaks, please stand up and say your name, and then you can say, so we will know, and the people at home who are watching this will know in a few days who's the person who's speaking, okay? So that's the first thing. Peter is one of the main petitioners, and if George will speak, I don't know who else might speak. We are asking the main petitioners to please stand over there in front of the refrigerator, basically, and so that the camera can focus on you over there. And again, you will introduce yourselves. Also, that is a 5-minute limit to each person right now. Let's see what else. Okay, that's it. So we're going to start. I read the purpose. And we have a presentation by the petitioners. Is Peter, if you would like to stand,
Sure.
Go over there and introduce yourself, please. And we have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Pete Novick. Most of you, I think, know me. And we have petitioned the town of Newfane to consider taking Daniels Hill Road as a public road. And the criteria for that and the deciding criteria are called public good, necessity, and convenience. So we wrote the select board a letter and wrote in brief form what we thought were the main points for public good, necessity, and convenience. So I'd like to just go through this very quickly with you. First, we are 7 homeowners, soon to be 8. One of the properties has been divided legally and has an Act 250 permit. And one of the owners is building a new home. Don't know exactly when it'll be done, but we have right now 7 homeowners there, 5 of whom are taxpayers in the town. And those are your neighbors, your friends, the people you see at church, the people you see in the volunteer groups or whatnot. That's us. Most of the Daniels Hill Road owners up there have been able to do fairly substantial improvements in their homes. We're kind of lucky that way, but we're just middle-class people. But you'll see that the quality of the homes reflects the quality of the road we have. We've been taking care of that road, I think, pretty well for 35 years. And I think you saw this afternoon that it shows it. We think that our road is ready and meets the Class 3 standards, or very close to it. And we understand that should the board adopt the road, we would bear the expenses of those things that have to be done, a new turnaround circle, new culverts, and those kinds of things. And some of that was pointed out to us. So once again, I would just beseech the board to please review the public good, necessity, and convenience statements that we made here in the letter that we have sent you earlier. I'd like to shift now briefly to cost. I put together a cost sheet. I've got extra copies there if anybody would like to see one. Very often we hear if the town takes over a road, it's going to be prohibitively expensive. So I tried to at least get something on paper that would show, that give us a baseline, someplace we could start. I took the budget for FY19, which started on the 1st of July, of $770,000 and change, and I put the man hours in the denominator, which is 4.5 man years, or about 9,080 hours. And I came up with a base case hourly cost for running the town highway department of $83 an hour. Now I know when you take care of a Class 1 road, it's much more expensive. When you take care of a Class 3 road, it's probably a little less expensive. But there is a baseline cost here, and as you know, VTrans gives the town money back every year, depending upon, under the Vermont Highway Grant Program. So I came up with a figure, about $3,800, which is a little less than 0.5% would be the increased cost for the town to accept Daniels Hill Road. Lastly, and this is also, I gave you guys in a letter recently, and I appreciate it if you go through that, especially in deliberative session if you have time. A comment was made when we made this pitch on July 16th, that if we do for one, if we do for you Daniels Hill Road, we have to do for everybody. So I got curious about that, and I made a list using the grand list of all of the private roads in Newfane. There are somewhere between 37 and 40, and over the last 2 weeks I tried to go to every one, walk them, and drive them. And I think if you go onto many of these, Cramp Lane, Double D Drive, Forest Lane, Hickey Road, Oak Hill Road, Old Pine Road, and many, many others, I think you'll see that I don't think there's going to be a big path beaten to the door here of the select board looking to do that. Many of these roads are barely passable. Many of these roads need significant improvements, and they have not been maintained in the high quality that Daniels Hill Road has for many, many years. Some of these roads also support only one house. So I think the statement, if you do for us, if the town of Newfane does for us, they'll have to do for everybody, might not really be, might not be accurate. So once again, we think we've met the standard for public good, convenience, and necessity. We provided you some statements for that. We think we've done a good job of estimating the costs. We think it's under $4,000 a year additional cost to the town to do that.
One more minute.
Thank you very much. And once again, I'll be happy to send an email to anybody if you'd like this list of all the town roads, and I would really encourage you to go look at them, and you'll see that it's not likely that you're going to get the folks that live in some of these roads to come up here and ask the town to take their road. It would be cost prohibitive in many, many respects. So those are my main points. Are there any questions? Well, we have 30 seconds.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You said Hickey Road?
Well, again, that's what's on here.
Hickey Road is a town road.
Okay, well. I didn't know that.
Well, okay.
How about Ledge Road?
I don't know where that is.
How does Hickey Road compare to Daniels Hill?
It serves one.
Oh, he said it was a
Is it a cow
private road. No,
Well,
it's
I
a
don't wanna
town
get in-
road.
Okay, so I got it. It's a mistake. But that's it. So those are my remarks, and I appreciate
Okay.
the time you take to look at our papers.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I'm not no. I'm George Knowles. I live on Daniels Hill Road. And the things I want to talk about a little bit are, the first thing that is an issue to the people on Daniels Hill is health and safety. We have a situation where, because it's a private road, we can afford to plow it once per snowstorm. We don't have the luxury of, like the town does, and the town does a wonderful job plowing roads. I'm not, not knocking that. I'm envious of it, and I wish we could do it, and I'm hoping we do. But as far as fire, police, ambulance, they can't necessarily get to us that well. And I think it's a serious concern, and it speaks to the betterment for the community. The second thing is we pay taxes the same as everybody else. Our assessments are not based on a private road. We don't get a discount because we have to pay for our own plowing. We don't get a discount of any sort like that. So it feels to me like we're being discriminated against on the basis of we're paying to plow the road in front of your house, and you're not paying to plow the road in front of our house. It's as simple as that. I don't think that's just. Okay, third, and this one I haven't got the data to back up completely, but it's something that I've talked to real estate agents and they agree with me. We are assessed the same as you are when it comes to assessing a house. And yet, when we sell our home, we don't get as much as you do for two identical homes. That is my feeling, and I believe I want to get that into the record because that is where I think we're really being harmed. We're taxed as if we were not on a private road. And yet, when somebody comes to look at our house to buy it, they say, oh man, I'd buy this house, but I'm not paying that much because it's on a private road and I'll be paying for snow plowing forever. So that's an issue, and I believe that's a harm that happens to us. And the harm is something that we would like to, stop being, I don't know, second-class citizens, if you will. And some people might come out here and say that if we do this, if the town accepts this, there's going to be a whole line of people lined up to do the same thing for their roads. And I don't necessarily think that's true. Okay, if you look at other towns, if I'm not mistaken, Brookline did a road 3 or 4 years ago, and from what I've heard, nobody came since then and asked to have their road converted. They did one road, and nobody else came and attempted to repeat the procedure. So I do not think that if you pass one town road, you have to worry about 15 people more clamoring on and saying they need to have it done. And I guess that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you, George.
Okay.
Okay. Yes? No, excuse me, the gentleman behind you first. I'm sorry.
Dane?
Can you please introduce yourself over there?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dane Rank, R-A-N-K, and I'm one of the petitioners. So, interesting point on George's point is I had to help Troop D by towing one of their cruisers out of a ditch in January 2011. They were coming up for a health and safety check to one of the houses on the hill, and they went off the road and couldn't get out. So I hopped in the 73 Ford and hooked it up and pulled them out. So that's a real danger. I'm hoping that I can share with you folks that during any declaration of emergency by the governor or by FEMA, I have to go to work. I'm mandated to report to work. Thompson House, I'm the administrator. We're part of the FEMA emergency response, and as such, I am certified in FEMA IS 200 Incident Command Emergency Management. I'm part of the FEMA response plan, and 60 elder residents of our community reside at Thompson House. Thompson House has to enact this emergency protocol, which I wrote, and which specifies me as the incident commander. Named in the protocol. During Irene, I had to report when the power and water failed to reach the facility, and we had to make arrangements to get water shipped in. A lot of these are quick, you have to make decisions. You have to be first to get to the water distributor. I think we've all seen what happens when you have poor management during an emergency in Florida and in North Carolina. You have residents who die, and those are your grandmothers, those are my grandmothers, those are the grandmothers in our community. During the fire in 2015, I was required to report, and we evacuated 57 residents, elder residents, some of whom were on pretty advanced machinery, to BMH, and not one person was harmed. So I am essential in that part of the plan. We are also part of the Vermont Nuclear and Biological Response Plans as a surge facility who take patients from the community and overflow once Brattleboro Memorial Hospital is fully engaged. It's pretty important that I be able to go to work in inclement weather. And as George has said, and because he was handling it before Pete was, we can't plow as much as we should, as much as would be to the level of what the town does. And there's a problem with that. If cruisers are going off the road, our neighbors are going off the road and flipping their cars on their hoods. I see it every year. We have a safety issue, and I think for the public good, you can probably see that I'm better off at work than I am stuck up on the hill if there's a flood or an emergency.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, one second. Okay, would you like to come up, stand up? Yeah. Okay, are you speaking as a petitioner?
Yes.
Petitioner, okay.
Just
And if you could state your
Energy
name.
and Knowles. And I really only have a couple of really quick things. I went to Wilmington Town Hall because I was curious just to ask, ever since you've had the last private road takeover, has anybody in the town asked to have a road taken over? Nope. And the town clerk talked to me for quite some time, and she said, one of the things that does happen is nobody will admit that a private road is your tax the same, but you get less money for your house, and your house is worth less because it's on a private road. She also said that, anecdotally, I'm losing my train of thought, anecdotally, that towns that have had private roads taken over, and she's pretty knowledgeable, she's been in the town clerk's position for a number of years, I think she told me 25, that if one road gets taken over by a town from private to town road, that it doesn't happen that other people insist that their roads be taken over. And that you do have to have certain criteria to have your road taken over. I think we've met them. We do a lot of work. I don't personally, George does most of the work, the physical work on the road, but we've maintained the road very well over the past, we've been up there since 1990, I think. And anyway, it's, again, I can't address much more than everybody else already has. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, are you a petitioner at this point? Okay, can you please come up and then introduce yourself? Thank you.
Chris Homesteader, I live on the road. I'm also a real estate agent. And I know by showing properties to people, they're much more happier if it's on a paved road. They're much happier that it's a town road. And they're really not happy that it's a private road. Daniels Hill Road has been well maintained. We're willing to do whatever needs to be done to appease the town. The town's right at the end of the street constantly, so it's not like it's going to be that much of an effort to add that little strip of land to what they actually do right now. And also, you know, what Jan just said about Wilmington. Chimney Hill, years ago, petitioned to have their streets private. The only thing that got private was their main drag. There's 500 houses up there and a lot of streets. No one else has come in and said, we want our streets private. So there's really nothing that's going to be happening because it costs money to bring your towns up to par to your standards. So it's not really anything that's going to throw your budget way out of place. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay, we're doing well. I appreciate that everybody's sticking to the time right now. And would you like to be next? What is your name, please?
Daniel Guadalupe.
Daniel? Okay.
I have lived on Daniels Hill since 1989.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
I have lived in Daniels Hill Road since 1989 when I purchased the current home. And at that time, there was a lot of year-round folks who owned, you know, but those were their second homes, and that is not the case today. My biggest concern is I have a 12-year-old. There was 1 year that I went off the road on Adams Hill. I totaled my car. This is like 8 years ago. But Adams was always well maintained. Our road is not as well as Adams Hill. And my biggest fear is that someday I'm going to go down that, you know, Daniels Hill, and this happens, that I've been going down, and not that our person hasn't taken care of the road, but for whatever reason, I'm sliding down. I never know if someone else is coming from the other direction. It's been a miracle that in all those years there hasn't been an accident. Never mind getting stuck going up. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, are there any other petitioners? Okay, so let me look at the agenda. And right now, before public comment, we are having a presentation from the town officials. And the first part of that would be presentations from road foreman and road commissioner and Jay Wilson. Would you like to stand up and come over here, please? And introduce, are you going to speak also?
No, I have nothing to say. Jay's got it all under control.
So I'm Jay Wilson, the road foreman. I walked up and down Daniels Hill. I guess my main purpose was to let the select board know what I thought the costs were going to be associated with it. So I walked up and down it. I did see 3 culverts that would need to be replaced and the turnaround that we spoke of today. There's approximately 36 to 3,700 feet of road. So using the FEMA rates for equipment and so forth, I kind of came up with what it would cost per time to grade it. So it'd be the grading, the raking, and applying the chloride to it. Approximately $600 a time. As far as plowing and grading would probably be once, maybe twice a year. That road would probably need it. And as far as plowing, that was much more difficult. So on an average small storm, figuring 3 trips up and down it, it's probably would add a couple $100 a storm. On a bigger storm, it would be much more than that. And on an ice storm, it would be a little hard to figure, but and I don't know, on an average year, 20 to 25 storms, maybe something in that neighborhood. I don't know. I couldn't come up with a good data on that. But as far as the money we get from the state, it's $1,521 a mile. So I think it's roughly $1,100 or something we would get for that additional length. And the only other concerns we had was the entrance at the bottom would mean the truck would have to go all the way to bottom Adams Hill to turn around to come back up through, because we would, on our way up through, we would go up Daniels Hill and then have to come down to the bottom, turn around and go back up to finish Adams Hill and Toby Hill.
Thank you, Jerry, very much. Is there anything you would like to add to it?
Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to add.
This is the road commissioner.
Road Commissioner Chris Williams.
Chris.
If you have to go down to turn around at Foot Adams Hill, it is a very dangerous turning a truck with a plow around out on that hill. People come down from Dover flying. And you gotta back around and get straightened around so you can head back up the hill again. If you're plowing Adams Hill, you just go up and go down. You don't have to turn around at the foot. That's all I got to say.
Yes.
Could I ask a question though? Because
Yes.
when we left, you were gonna look at the bottom of the hill and see what you thought we could do. Because we wanna work with you on this. We're not trying to work against you on this or be at odds. Did you look at it for this, to see if there was something we could do to the bottom of the road that would make it feasible for the truck to turn right instead of have to turn left?
I came down the hill and I looked at it on the left-hand side down. That land is fairly level right there on the left side. That could be opened up so you could make a swing and get turned around there.
Okay, so.
Of course, I don't know who owns the land, and that's out of the right-of-way of the people of the road.
Well, it's mine on the high side and Monty and Julie Surf on, across Adams Hill Road. That's about a 100-acre lot in there that they own.
I'm not talking about a cross.
Right.
So it'd be yours then?
That's mine. That'd be easy to do. I'd pay for it.
Okay.
That's, to answer your question, that's what I saw.
Okay, because we understand that the road is not a perfect road, and it needs work. and we
Okay,
talked
I'm
about-
sorry, George, you know what, we're gonna have to follow the
I'm sorry,
procedure,
you're right,
and
you're right, I
and you
was-
can speak again later, okay?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, I apologize.
Okay. So you're finished, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So Shannon Meckel, Administrative Assistant, is going to
I'm
do
gonna
a
stay
present-
right here because if I try to get out of here.
Oh,
I'm gonna
sure.
fall. Exactly. I know better. So I have packets if there's on that table. If you want copies, you're welcome to.
Peter, if you want to give some out, maybe people could share.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for helping.
I need for you to do that. We got to share. Thank you.
So, I was tasked with, also finding public good, necessity, and convenience. And in doing that, I spoke with Rich Carroll, the attorney, who gave me, a list of questions that the board would need to answer, to kind of determine that. So, I started out with some historic information. So, in 1974, the Haynes brothers were issued an Act 250 permit for the development. Item 10C in the findings of fact and conclusions of law state that the road will remain the responsibility of the applicant until the individual owners assume responsibility for the maintenance, and the town will not be requested to take the road over. In 1990, the select board received correspondence from Daniels Hill Road Association requesting that the town take over Daniels Hill Road. And those minutes are attached as well. In October of the same year, a letter was sent from the select board to Daniels Hill Road Association outlining their concerns. And at that point, it was because the road did not meet specifications. And that the association was subject to the Act 250 permit, and they hadn't received a petition, so they really couldn't act any further on it. So in November, the association attended a select board meeting. They discussed the issues, and they had suggested that if they wanted to go forward, that they did present a petition, which near as I can find in the records wasn't received. Also in November of 1990, a letter was written from the Environmental Commission addressing the Act 250 issue, and in there it stated, in the original finding of facts, the District Environmental Commission found positively under Criterion 7 municipal impact. Part of the reason for that decision was the road will remain the responsibility of the applicant until the individual landowners assume responsibility for maintenance. The town will not be requested to take the road over. Because you want to change conditions under which the permit was approved, an amendment would be necessary. That letter is also. So then moving on to the criteria. The criteria for deciding on whether to reclassify or lay out a road as a public road is if public good, necessity, and convenience of the inhabitants of the municipality require that the private road be accepted and laid out as a town road. The questions recommended to determine this were how many properties would benefit from taking over the road, how many year-round primary residents are on the road. So going through tax administration and the town view program, it looks like there's currently 8 properties that have Daniels Hill Road addresses, and 2 Adams Hill are abutters, so they were legal abutters during this process, but they don't actually have Daniels Hill Road addresses. Out of those 8, there are 5 primary year-round residents. And the other question the attorney had was how many other private roads are in Newfane, and who do they serve? And the last attachment is the list of private roads that we were able to pull together. And it looks like there's 37. And the list shows each road how many, it's not how many houses, how many properties, because although they may not have a house, they do have to access their land. So, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And if you look in the packet, Shannon has added the exhibits of what she has just spoken about. Okay, thank you very much, Shannon, for your work with this and for contacting the town attorney about this. Okay, so now we are up to public comment. Gary. Oh, you can, Gary, you can stay over there. Just introduce yourself, please.
Stand here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Gary Katz. I live on Bench Road, which is a town road. I listened with interest to each of the comments that the petitioners made, and I'm very concerned about a couple of items. One is that to the extent that anybody has said anything about other roads being in line to be picked up by the town if this one is approved, it's strictly opinions that people are uttering. I can utter the opposite opinion and say that I think it will open the floodgates. Absolutely irrelevant. What comes to mind in addition to that, though, is that I'm a firm believer that each of us has to accept and take personal responsibility for the decisions that we make. There's not a single person who lives on Daniel Hill Road who didn't know that that was a private road when they bought their properties. They didn't know that they'd have to contribute to maintaining the road. Actually, I think part of the argument that was made about the condition of the road and the emergency access that's compromised by it is an indictment of the homeowners on that road because they're not maintaining the road adequately if that's an issue. We didn't want to live on a private road, so we paid more for a house on the town road. When the realtor tells the people on Daniel Hill Road that they won't be able to get as much money for the house as they'd like to get, they didn't pay as much as they would have had to pay if it was on the town road in the first place. So it's really sort of a wash. You pay a little less, you get a little less, but you've made a choice to live on that road. The third point that I want to make is the legal point. The items that Shannon pointed out in her information, I think are very persuasive. First of all, there were legal documents that stated that the road maintenance was going to be the responsibility of the developer or subsequent homeowners, that no one would ever petition the town to take that over. Now all of a sudden people want to change the rules on it. There's a legal document, and the previous select board maintained that that was the legality and turned down the request for Dan Hill Road to be taken over as a town road. I understand the people's desire to have the town take care of it. It's nice knowing that Jay and the guys are going to come down and plow the road. But they knew when they bought the road. We bought a home out in the middle of no place because we didn't want traffic noise. There are people in town who complained about the traffic noise on their roads when I was on the select board, who bought their houses knowing full well that they were on a main road. What do you expect when that's going to happen? Same thing on Daniels Hill Road. You bought a house on a private road, you paid accordingly, you made an agreement to maintain that road, you were part of a legal understanding that the town would not be burdened by that road, and now people want to change rules. I hope that the select board in its deliberative session will take into account the views and considerations of the other people in town who don't live on Daniels Hill Road, who paid more for their homes because they are on a town road, and consequently are getting the benefit of the town maintaining the road. The other point that I would remind the board of is that the tax issue is a little bit spurious because the vast majority of the taxes go to the schools. So the amount that's spent on the roads as a percentage of the total tax bill we pay is relatively minor. And I don't think that the select board should be swayed by this second-class citizen argument. If the people bought the homes believing that they were on a town road, it's a different story. You buy the home on a private road, you've bought it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. Okay, I have to make sure everybody who wants to speak gets the first term before I sorry about that, call on you again. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak? Yes, Doris, thank you.
Doris Knetchel, I'm a lister in town for 100 years or so. I have a couple of questions and a couple of statements, and as Gary alluded to the taxes, the town taxes are 25% of your taxes, 75% are for education. And I'm not convinced that people pay less because it's on a private road. I didn't do any research, didn't realize that question was coming up. But I have another question. And are we talking about the entire Daniels Hill Road that was part of the Act 250? Because I think that needs to be clarified. I don't know if the board is aware that the road goes, there's a portion that comes off lower down, and there's a property that's on the lower part of that road, and then there's a section that is not developed. So that when that development was done, it was the entire portion of, so it's like, okay, is that supposed to be brought up to town specs? Is that part of the whole request or not? It's a clarification that I'm interested to know the answer to that.
Well, Jay measured it.
Excuse me, from the town's point, so that you know beforehand, are you talking about, because the Daniels Hill development, when it was done in the Act 250 permit, includes that part.
Right.
Chris?
This is just what I have been told through the years. The reason it stopped at the hill, top of the hill, excuse me, was the state of Vermont said it was a deer yard down through there, and they wouldn't let them use that road down through there. I may be wrong or I may be right, but I remember that.
But I know that there was a question regarding one of the properties on that road about doing a subdivision on a portion of that. So,
Excuse me for 1 second. Are you continuing with other things, or is
Yes.
that?
Mike's
Okay.
got something to say.
yes.
Okay, Mike?
I mean, for the road that we're taking over is 3,700 and some odd feet long, which Jay measured. So that's what it is. The other part of it, we're not looking at.
Okay, I wanted that.
Okay.
And one other thing I was thinking about too is what Gary was saying, as far as the town not being asked. I'm not made my mind up one way or the other no matter what. But it also says, if you read that, and as a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer, but if you get looking into that whole thing, the applicant will not ask the town to take it over until then it goes over to the homeowners of the thing. The applicant was Haynes Brothers.
Correct.
Yeah, actually, it states the town will not be asked, it doesn't say who.
By the
will.
applicant,
No,
you said.
it just says the town.
Well, that's what he
will not be
read
asked.
off.
No, it's by
Okay, wait.
by the
Can
applicant
we
until
just,
the residence is purchased. Sorry.
It's still Doris's turn to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Doris, you now have about 3 more minutes.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah.
And when you talk about other roads, people requesting to be taken over, I know there was a case in Dover where the Dover Hill development, Dover ended up taking over that whole thing, but the people had to pay to have the town bring it up to town specifications, and they were charged a tax. So if somebody couldn't afford the out-of-pocket, if you had a portion of it, if somebody requested on one of these other 37 town roads to bring it up to town specs, the town could, if they wanted to do that, the people that live on the road could pay a special tax if the town or someone else brought that road up to town specifications. That's how they did it in Dover for the Dover Road thing, because the developer went to the light in Wilmington and nobody knows if he went right or left.
Thank you,
That's
Doris, for your information. I just have to still see if is there anybody else who's not spoken yet? Anybody? Okay. Now I can call, now Peter, this gentleman had his hand raised first.
Dane Rank. So no, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Wilson regarding the, thank you, by the way, for substantiating the fact that you had to pay more money for a house that was on a town road, because that was a point of just anecdotal information up to this point, but that's helpful. It's a real world example. But the second thing is that it's very clearly outlined here that because where the response from the state of Vermont Environmental Board to the association that this permit that could be approved, but there will be an amendment that is necessary. So there is clearly a legal framework by which this can be changed and the town can be asked to take over the road, and it's right in Exhibit E. So I just wanted to point that out if you hadn't read that part there.
Gary, you want to respond to that?
May I respond?
Yeah, and then it'll be Peter's turn.
No amendment has been developed or approved. So what we're working with is the existing legal basis for the decisions, which do not allow for the residents to petition the town to take over the road. I did have one other point that I wanted to make in relation to this gentleman's earlier testimony. I think it's very important that he be able to get to work. My question is, with that responsibility that you have, why purchase a property on a private road where you're going to have the issue? That's not my problem or the rest of the town's problem. That's a decision that you made. And if it was so important to you, then you should buy a house on a town-maintained road.
If I may respond,
Okay.
that was a question. If he asked me a question, I was hoping I could respond to it.
Okay, just a quick response and
Okay.
then,
The answer is that I didn't live here for 2 years and observed the road maintenance before I purchased a house in that area. And I think that would be an unreasonable expectation.
But you knew it was a private road.
Right, I didn't understand that meant
Okay.
it would be different.
So you knew it was a private road when you bought it?
Yes, I didn't know the private roads.
Consequences.
I didn't know the consequences of a private road versus a public road. As I said, not having observed the land before I purchased the property I don't think anybody does look at the house like that.
Peter?
Pete Novick again, just to clarify from the Act 250 permit, the paragraph that Shannon read to us, paragraph 10C. I'm not a lawyer either, but there are two statements here. And you know, when you do the Second Amendment thing, the right shall not be denied, it's a little bit convoluted. So let me just read the two statements because they are two independent thoughts. The first statement is this, quote, "The road shall remain the responsibility of the applicant," that's the Haynes brothers, "until the individual owners assume responsibility for the maintenance, period," end of sentence. The next sentence says, "The town will not be requested to take the road over." There's some built-in ambiguity there between what is the antecedent of "the town will not be requested to take the road over" from the applicant. It's in the same paragraph. So the applicant, which is the Haynes brothers, for as long as it takes them, and it could have taken them 2 or 3, probably did take them 3 or 4 years to sell all the property, during that time, they would be precluded from doing this. So I think, whether it's by an amendment to the Act 250 permit or not, there is a legal remedy to do this, since it's not clear, and probably Mr. Carroll, the attorney for the town, could clarify whether that statement, that second statement, "the town will not be requested to take the road over," applies to all of the applicants and the assigns, I guess that's a legal term, or not. I think that would be a worthwhile thing to find out.
Thank you. Shannon?
I think it's already been clarified because that was done in 1974. Later on in 1990, when they came to the town the first time, the same Act 250 office told them no, because you need to amend the permit. It says the town will not be asked to take over the road. So if you want to do that, you would have to go through Act 250 first.
Peter, if you got the packet, I was just
From
busy
1974 to
underlining it.
1990 was,
November 6, 1990. Doris,
Having worked.
please stand up,
Oh,
Doris.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Having worked in Dover as administrative assistant for a number of years, there was a lot of development going on there. And every time a developer came in to do a condo or whatever they were doing, the town requested that the roads be built to town highway specifications, but that the town would not take over the road. And that was the condo associations in most of those cases. It was a condo association, not the developer. It was clearly understood that it was a condo association would not be required or not ask the town to take over that road. But they had to go to town specs. That was Act 250.
Gary?
Several.
Just one more comment on the Act 250 language, and I'm not an attorney either, so everybody's disavowed the attorneyhood in here. But I do know that attorneys are very, very careful about the language that they use. And if there was ever any intent at all to distinguish the potential responsibility for the town between the time that the developer was developing the land and the properties were sold off, the language would have been written differently. They never asked the town to take over the road, would have followed straight after the developer's piece. It wouldn't have included that second part of that sentence that talks about the properties once they're sold. So I think we're trying to rewrite history to look at that any other way. That there's a clear legal statement that was made that the town would not be asked to take over that road.
May I say something? Dan,
Dane? Yeah.
you just mentioned a few minutes ago that, in response to what Gary said,
Yeah.
that you lived on your property in your house for 2 years before you found out that.
No, he asked why I would move to the road when I knew that there were problems with maintenance. Or why would I move-
No
oh,
problems with maintenance, he didn't say that.
sorry. Or he said, why
Gary's-
would I move to a private road when I thought I might have trouble getting to work?
Right,
Okay, and my response was, I did not observe the plowing of the road for a year or two before I moved there, because nobody does that. That's not what you do before you buy a house. I would not have known, he said, he assumed that I knew that private roads were second-class
Okay,
roads.
can I answer this, Gary, for a minute, and then you? Well, I just want to make a comment that I was a real estate broker for 35 years. I held a license as a broker, not just a salesperson. And I know that it was my legal responsibility when I was showing any property to disclose, to research and then disclose everything that I knew to a potential buyer. And so I would expect that if I don't know if you dealt with the real estate broker, but I would expect that if you did, it was the real estate broker's responsibility to tell you that you would, if you were interested in this house and it was on private land, that he or she would have to explain to you what that meant, that you'd get X number of services or 0 services from the town, that you would, I think that's sort of what Gary was alluding to, I'm not sure, but that you would have a knowledge of what you're getting into in buying on a private road.
So if I may respond, as a broker then, you understand that when you're buying a house, you also have not observed the road for the 2 years previously and know everything about how it's plowed and how it's maintained. What you would probably disclose to your buyer is that there is a $25 a month fee to the association plus whatever the cost of road maintenance is over the year. But if you didn't know, you couldn't disclose, I guess is my point.
Okay. All right, Gary?
We looked for our home for 4 years up here. We dealt with numerous real estate agents and brokers. Every time there was a home on a private road, they were very, very clear to us about what our responsibilities would be there. I mean, they said the town does not maintain this road. Beautiful home, if you like it, just be aware that you're going to have to maintain the road.
No. I mean, that was my guess that it should have been done. Melissa?
I just want to say that I think there's going to be more followers for the private roads because I live on a private road and I already know the neighbors and the ones across the road are also talking that if this goes through, they want you guys to take on our roads. So I think there's going to be more coming out of the woodwork.
Okay, thank you.
Just to note that and when I've looked for homes, either renting or buying, my criteria is it has to be on a flat road and it has to be maintained publicly. So, I mean, I am very aware of how roads could be in the state of Vermont and why I want to avoid it. I live on Route 30.
Okay, the gentleman in the back.
Yeah, what I'm confused is,
Excuse me, can you stand with the camera, please? And introduce your name again, please?
Chris Helmstetter on Daniels Hill Road. But I'm confused if the state has a way to turn a private road into a public road, and if the homeowners are willing to pay for any improvements to make that road adequate for the town of Newfane, then I'm not understanding all this questioning. Now, all these people have other private roads that I've been on. I haven't been to all the ones in Newfane. A lot of them are really bad shape. And those people aren't going to be willing to cough up $30,000, $50,000 to do it. Daniels Hill Road is in pretty good shape. It needs to be graded, and then I guess some culverts. It's not redoing a whole road. So the state of Vermont has a way to petition the town to take over a road, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you. George.
George Knowles again. The first thing I want to some of the stuff that Gary said. Things always do evolve in time, over 30 years. 35, 40 years ago, when they came up with our subdivision and they said, well, you need 10 acres to build on, you need maintain the road forever, and that was the town was trying to protect themselves from people coming in at that time, buying up a farm, whack it up into 40 lots, sell them off to a bunch of people for second homes, walk out and stick the town with all the maintenance. Okay, so So that's how it was then, that's why this was put in place, and that's what we're still living with today. But when you fast forward to today, what has happened is it's not. When I bought there, almost all of us were out-of-state people. Now, everybody on the road except me and one other person live here all the time. And now we've got a situation that we've changed the zoning, so the town lets us build on 2 acres, not 10 anymore. Things have changed. Things don't always remain static. They change. Women vote. I mean, what the heck? Things change.
Bad example.
When did that happen?
And what we're saying is,
Peter's just said that's the problem, women vote.
no, I don't think so. I mean, and the other thing that Gary said was it's a wash. The tax thing, it's a wash. Gary, it's not a wash. If I'm paying tax on a higher grand list, then my property will yield. And you're paying tax on the same grand list that I am. I'm supporting your taxes for the entire time you and I both live in the town. I am helping to pay your taxes. And I get nothing for it. I am being discriminated against as a taxpayer. If your grand list and my grand list are identical, and I'm on a private road and my retail value is less than yours, the grand list doesn't reflect that. And I'm being discriminated against. I'm paying more taxes to support your road. You're not paying any to support mine. That's all I have.
Thank you. Gary first and then you, because he had his hand up before.
The arguments just become more and more spurious the longer people are talking over here. First of all, there are no 2 identical properties in Newfane. When we bought our home, they had to go 20 miles to try to find comparables to use for the house. Some weren't even in the state of Vermont, for God's sake. But the point is that when the house is for sale on that private road, say it's a $300,000 house, that's taking into account that that's on the private road. And when you sell that house, nobody knows what you're going to get for it. I don't know if I were to put my house up for sale, whether I would get what the listers have it assessed at. Might be more, might be less. There's just no way to know that. But I do know that when I purchased the house, if I purchased that house on a private road, I would never have offered the same amount of money for it, nor would it have been requested in the first place. There was a sort of a discount that we got for the homes on the private roads because everybody knew that there are going to be costs involved in maintaining the road. When you bought on the public road, you didn't get that discount. So the argument about supporting each other's properties with the taxes is a little bit unsupported.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Can you address the fact that there is no difference in tax?
My turn. Couple of things. I think one of the things that people were talking about was the Act 250. That says we would have to amend the Act 250. I think we would be willing to work and do that piece, and it could be amended. That's not a problem. I think the other thing is if you look at the grand list and what houses are listed at, I can tell you what our house is listed at, and I'm quite sure that we could not get that. And our house is not listed as being on a private road, so it's worthless. It's listed at a fair market value for the town. But I would not get that amount of money for my house because it's on a private road. You know, you talk about our arguments being spurious. I think yours is equally spurious.
Just a minute. May I ask Doris, thank you, Jan, for expressing your thoughts and feelings. Doris, do you have a response to that about prices of homes on private roads versus public roads? Any sense?
I haven't really done a thorough look at the whole thing, but the fair market value for when they recently did a townwide reappraisal, in 2017
Yes.
townwide. The acre amount, the price per acre doesn't vary because it's on a private road or a public road. There's no difference. The difference is the neighborhood that they're in. The neighborhood makes a difference. The village, Route 30, their neighborhood, the first acre is at $40,000. There are other neighborhoods where it's like the first acre is $45,000. Some are.
Just a minute, please.
Okay, I'm waiting.
But it varies for the value of the land. And the house isn't less because it's on a private road. The comparison of the houses and the square foot, it doesn't matter if it's on a private road or if it's on a town road. It doesn't matter. It's the fair market value of the property in comparison throughout town.
Okay, here's the question.
And it doesn't, you know, so in the taxes are higher on residential property than they are on non-residential. Not a whole lot different, but.
Okay, so here's the question. My family owned a house on Route 30, and of course, as somebody said before, when you're buying a house on the main road, you know right away you're going to be hearing traffic sounds. I don't know when we sold my parents' house, the noise had gotten quite a bit louder in the 40 years that they owned it, you know, where you thought that the logging trucks were going to come into your bedroom because they were speeding down so fast. But I do know that people had a big concern, you know, in terms of considering buying a house that was on Route 30, particularly on a hill. Is that correct? That affects?
Well, there's a lot of things that go into the value. You know, you start with the base value, like I said, $40,000 an acre. Then you might take into consideration the topography. Route 30 is $35,000 for the first acre.
So it's cheaper.
The village is $100,000 for the first acre.
The first acre on Daniels Hill and the first acre on Adams Hill, are they both 40?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Yes, they are.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, Dan?
I'm sorry, are you done?
I don't know. I hope so.
I'll sit down again.
No, please don't.
Dane Rank again. So that actually does make sense then, because when in 2010, when we purchased my house, the bank came and appraised it. I had 3 banks appraise it because they were asking $245 for it. And no bank in the world was going to loan me more than $215,000 for it, because it was on, that they told me, the private road. There was a decrease. But when I received my tax bill, I was being taxed on $259,000 initially. Doris was very nice. She came to the house. We worked it out. We got it. It still didn't get down to what I just purchased it for a month before, fair market value. And now it makes a lot of sense. If the taxes are determined without regard for public or private road, then our houses are worth less, but we're being taxed on more. So I wonder if this is a bigger question of discrimination then, because that is actual harm by the legal definition. So, just wondering.
Peter, and then Gary.
All right.
Peter and Gary.
We've had a home sale on Daniels Hill Road in the last 6 weeks. A small cabin, which I believe is listed at $139 in the 2017 grand list, and was put on the market for $139, sold for $124, I believe. I got
$126.
$126. Thank you.
Just happen to have it here.
So what does that mean? Does it mean, is that the end of the world? No, it's just a set of numbers, and at least it's a set of real and concrete numbers, and I would advise you to at least consider that and think about what it might mean. What I'd like to do is just finish up is tee off with something Chris said, our newest neighbor here. No, now you're your second newest neighbor. Chris said something I think is very valuable, which is, if a group of homeowners are willing to write the checks and get a road completely up to the town specs, why would you not want to take the town road? Why would the town not want to take a road if a bunch of homeowners said, we will do all these things and get the road up to where it's the best town road? You know, my gosh, that's like looking at a gift horse. Sure, everybody should take that. And that goes back to some of the comments people made here with regard to safety, security, 911 access, and all the other things that the town does so well with maintaining the town roads with the equipment and the people that they have. They do an outstanding job. Of course we would want to do that. It's not about lowering our costs per se. It's about all these other intangible benefits that we get from that. So thank you.
Gary.
Okay, 2 points, and one of them is related to the way that the whole discussion is ranging so far from the original points over here. There were discussions about fair market value. Well, if Doris was given 4 hours, she'd be able to explain to us what the state law says about fair market value and the assessments, and it's not what you pay for the house, which is true, but it is not what the house sold for the last time. It's what it was assessed at when the town last did its townwide assessment. So the relevance to this conversation is just not there. Okay. The other thing is that no matter how people want to draw the picture today, there's still a legal document that was tested 20 years after the initial legal document was written. The select board said that that was the legal situation, that the town was not to be requested to take over the road. I don't see any basis at all today to suggest that anything has changed and that the select board should come up with any conclusion other than what that previous select board said, which was the law said this, you agreed to it, end of story.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to say at this point, okay, Doris, and then I'm going to speak. Go ahead.
In reference to the 10 acres,
Yes.
it was 10 acres because it was required by Act 250.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it was.
But it's not anymore. That's why I'm saying things change.
In order to do the development, by the way that Haynes did it, the
Right.
lots had to be at least 10 acres.
That was the.
Got nothing to do with what the zoning is. Nothing to do with the zoning.
So
You're right, you're right.
I would like to say that I've given everybody a few chances, a few times of speaking, and I think that we're going to have to move on soon to a deliberative session. And is that correct, Shannon? Yes. So just want to make sure. So I thank everybody for participating and saying what you think and feel about what's going on. The bottom line is that now the select board is going to go into deliberative session shortly. And again, you will have to understand that this is not going to be deliberated with our personal feelings or things. We have to follow the guidelines and the laws. So, is anybody who can make a motion for us to go into deliberative session?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and a second? Second. Okay. So Shannon, should we go into the town bathroom? Into the bathroom?
Do you come back out of here? Should we wait or do we go?
It's a written decision, so they have 10 days to issue a written decision, so
So we go.
unless you want to sleep here for 10 days.
Okay, so are we adjourning the meeting? Are we adjourning the
You're not
meeting?
adjourning, you'll adjourn when you come out,
Okay, but
but they,
Won't be no decision tonight.
right,
okay.
it won't be
Yeah.
a written decision,
Okay, so then, I thank everybody for coming here. We all thank you for coming, and I really thank everybody for having a quiet and civil meeting. It makes a lot of difference to me, and thank you for sharing, and we will get back to you. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
and safe trip home.
We won't be voting.
Let's go into session.
Oh, we haven't done.
Oh, you
Yeah,
did
we
vote
have-
on going
You don't like, we'll set it.
Yes, we did.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Mike made the motion, Chris seconded.
Yeah,
but you didn't vote.
We have to have a vote first.
all those in
Okay.
favor, what's next?
Oh,
Okay, we have a motion, and all those in favor of going into deliberative session, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that is with Select Board and Shannon. Okay, we are going.